There was something deeply shocking about seeing Elvira behind that counter, her eyes avoiding mine, as if she were trying to hide a secret that weighed on her heart. That moment would change everything, but the truth was still hidden in the folds of fate. Before we go any further, I invite you to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our future stories, full of emotions and reflections. But before revealing what happened, let's take a step back to understand how we got here. Marina del Sol was a small coastal town where the sun kissed the waves crashing against the rocks every morning. Raul, a young man of 25, was born and raised there in a family that had known the bitter taste of hardship. From an early age, he had learned to fight against adversity with a determination that shone in his eyes. But life, often harsh and cruel, never seemed to give him a break. One day, fate decided to put Don Tommaso in his path, a man whose heart was as big as his fortune. Don Tommaso saw in Raul something that few had noticed, a hidden potential, a spark of greatness that was just waiting to be nurtured. So without hesitation, he decided to offer him the opportunity to study, opening the doors to a future that seemed unattainable. Raul left his hometown with a wealth of hopes and dreams, ready to face the big city. Here, among the skyscrapers and crowded streets, he immersed himself in his studies, proving to be one of the brightest students of his generation. With each exam he passed, each praise he received, he seemed to get closer and closer to his dream. In the end, his hard work rewarded him with an offer from one of the most prestigious technology companies in the country. In that frenetic and competitive world, Raul met Elvira. She was not just his boss, she was a magnetic presence, a woman who exuded intelligence and authority. Her every word was considered, her every decision was right and respected. But beyond efficiency and competence, there was a profound humanity in Elvira that made her unique. Raul could not help but admire her. Elvira had become his point of reference, the model he wanted to follow. Over time, their relationship grew stronger. It wasn't just a professional bond. A sincere friendship had developed between them. Raul began to feel safe under her guidance, as if nothing could go wrong as long as Elvira was by his side. But fate, always unpredictable, had another test in store for him. One morning, Elvira didn't show up for work. No one knew where she was, and soon unexpected news spread through the office. Elvira had resigned. The news shocked everyone. Why would she abandon everything? It was impossible to believe that such a strong and determined woman could leave her position from one day to the next. Rumors began to circulate. Some whispered that Elvira had been forced to resign, that there were dark reasons behind that decision, perhaps linked to questionable ethical behavior. Raul found himself having to deal with a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Admiration for his former boss, and doubt that those rumors had any truth to them. If you liked the video, it would be kind of you to give it a precious like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. As Raul tried to untangle these feelings, a part of him refused to believe those voices. Something inside him told him that there was much more behind Elvira's resignation, that the truth was far different from what his colleagues were whispering to him. But the days passed, and Elvira remained a shadow of the past, inaccessible and distant. Raul decided to take a few days off to return to Marina del Sol, hoping to find some peace. Walking through the streets of his childhood, he noticed a new cafe, a modest and welcoming place that seemed to have just opened. He decided to go in, attracted by the peaceful atmosphere and the smell of freshly brewed coffee. And that's where he saw her. Elvira, behind the counter, seemed like a different person. Her gaze was dark, far from the days when she led the team with confidence and charisma. Raul stopped, incredulous. He couldn't believe that this woman, who he had always considered invincible, was reduced to working in a cafe, far from everything she had built. He approached her, his heart pounding in his chest. "Elvira?" His voice shook slightly, but he tried to keep calm. Elvira looked up, and Raul saw a mixture of surprise and pain in her eyes. "Raul, what are you doing here?" she asked, trying to hide her embarrassment with a tired smile. Raul couldn't wait. He needed answers. "What happened to you? Why did you leave the company?" Elvira sighed deeply, inviting him to sit down. "Wait until my shift is over. We'll talk calmly." Those hours seemed eternal to Raul. The image of Elvira, so different from how he remembered her, tormented him. Finally, when the cafe was empty, they sat down at a secluded table. Elvira began to tell her story, a story that Raul would never have imagined. After resigning, Elvira had been overwhelmed by a deep depression. The pain of the corruption she had discovered in the company, of the injustice she had failed to eradicate, had consumed her. She could not bear to be forced to choose between her principles and her career. In that dark moment, the only light had been the call from her mother, who had asked her to come home to help with the coffee. The coffee was all that remained to her family after her father's death. Elvira, destroyed, agreed to return. Raul listened in silence, feeling his heart tighten in his chest. But when Elvira finished speaking, his eyes were drawn to a photo hanging on the wall behind her. In that photo, Elvira was smiling next to her parents. The face of the man next to her was painfully familiar. It was Don Tommaso. Raul's world seemed to stop. Don Tommaso, the man who had changed his life, was Elvira's father. Everything began to make sense. Their lives had been intertwined from the beginning without them realizing it. "Elvira, your father." Raul searched for words, his voice heavy with emotion. "Your father is the man who financed my studies. It's thanks to him that I'm here today." Elvira remained silent, surprised and moved by the revelation. That hidden bond, now emerging to light, gave a new meaning to their relationship. They were not just two colleagues, they were two souls, linked by a common destiny. Raul, feeling a new determination growing inside him, proposed to Elvira that they start a business together. He couldn't let everything they had built go to waste. He wanted to create something new, something that could honor the memory of Don Tommaso and give hope to those who, like them, had seen the dark side of success. Elvira hesitated. The pain of the past was still alive, but Raul convinced her that together they could make a difference. And so, with a decision full of emotion and courage, they began a new chapter in their lives.